So, guten Tag an die Wesen auf Twitch und auf YouTube. Wir machen weiter mit Mega Man X Dive Offline. Wieder weiter mit dem altbekannten Aufzug. Ja. Ich muss mein Mikrofon kurz nochmal korrigieren. Moment. Ja, die Halterung will leider manchmal nicht ganz so, wie ich möchte. So. Wir haben nicht mehr viele Ebenen vor uns. Jetzt bezüglich Übertragung gerade wieder zu etwas übergegangen, was ich die letzten Übertragungen ein wenig vernachlässigt habe. Nämlich mich bei der ganzen Geschichte hinzustellen. Da sind meine Bildschirme zwar immer noch nicht optimal positioniert. Good day, Time Hunter. Well, to be honest, I don't like this game. The more I played of it, the less I liked it. The core gameplay is, in my opinion, very uninspired, especially for a game that features so many Mega Man characters, so many different game series of the Mega Man franchise. And for that background, the gameplay, the core gameplay is really, really basic, to put it that way. And I mean, most of the time I had the feeling that I needed to increase a lot of different options in order to make my character, my weapon, my basic attributes strong enough to even be able to defeat enemies. And so my game experience with this game wasn't all that positive. I mean, my usual experience with Mega Man games is that for 2D Mega Man games, in offline you're constantly... I don't know how much you played the online version, but what I saw when I watched Steve play the online version, the first few things that which I saw were my problem with the online version is that the online version depends a lot on giving you daily tasks to fulfill, but the game in both versions has a lot of how do you say that in English? You get a lot of items in very much of the same, very much different items, and a lot of those, and you need them all in the end for upgrading something. Be it your character, be it your weapon, or certain abilities you can unlock in the game. At first, the game seemed simply complex, in a way that you have a lot of things you can do in this game. And you discover part by part every single ability you can use in the game. The problem is, for me, that it doesn't take a lot of time to overlook the complexity of the game, as there isn't much complexity. There are different characters with different abilities, different weapons with different abilities, and certain abilities that every character can have. And this is a little too loud. And you pretty quickly get to a point where you simply have to complete a level, and afterwards the only thing you do is click through a lot of different menus just to increase some numbers, only to be able to even beat the enemies in the next stage, or to be able to harm a boss enough to beat him in a certain time. Yeah, and that's exactly the type of gameplay I absolutely dislike. I don't want to have to be lucky in order to be able to play a game. I simply want to play a game. I don't want to think a lot about how I upgrade my abilities. And if I do, then please, in a complexity that gives me gameplay-wise changes, and not simply enemies that need to have more health or deal more damage, and the rest of it is simply forgettable. If I compare the core gameplay of this to classic Mega Man games or even the X series, then you see that there's a big difference in level design. This game, many times I get the feeling that everything's just about using weapons and abilities, and every few seconds the whole screen flashes or explodes, and then every enemy is beaten, and you run a few meters, and then you have the next arena, which simply throws a lot of enemies in your face. You'll defeat those, and then you'll move on, and that's about it. When in classic Mega Man games, you don't have that much enemies on screen at once, but those enemies are cleverly placed, or have certain abilities that you have to adapt to. And this game, it would be wrong to say there's nothing like that, but it doesn't feel like that, because many of your weapons don't have abilities which make for a complex gameplay. So most of the time you just find yourself shooting the enemies down and move on. Certain bosses had a little amount of complexity, and I tried to beat those bosses in a normal way. In fact, I constantly refused to use what the game gave me, but the more I played of the game, the more I realized that I have to use all these abilities. Like in this game mode, you have these two bosses with a lot of HP. You're supposed to beat them in a certain amount of time, but without using invincibility like I do in this case, it would take me forever, and I simply wouldn't be able to harm these bosses at enough at all to beat them in time. Not even mentioning that Magma Dragoon has an ability in the second half of his battle which turns him invincible for not a short amount of time. And this was a concept that wasn't good in his original form. But in this case, you're under time pressure and have an enemy which can make himself invincible for every 2 or 3 attack patterns. I see you understand what I mean. If your enemy has to have around 300 or even 400 life bars, then there's absolutely no good way of seeing as a player how strong you are, because 400 is a big number. And I'm dealing multiple thousands of damage to this enemy. I don't see